Do you know who Sam Altman is? You should. Probably one of the most important people in technology, and as a consequence, one of the most important people in business in the world right now, because he's the CEO of OpenAI. OpenAI is that artificial intelligence firm responsible for ChatGPT. Now, last week, Sam Altman came forward to denounce what he calls one of the worst mistakes we've ever made. That mistake: moving to remote work, and the thought that everyone could remain fully remote forever. Altman considers the idea of remote work as an experiment in itself, but that ultimately everyone needs to be together in order to create a cohesive and productive work environment. Let's talk about this further. Dr. Jean-Nicolas Reyt joins us on the line, Associate Professor of Organizational Behavior at McGill University's Desautels Faculty of Management. Dr. Reyt, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So what do you think about what Sam Altman had to say? Is he right?
He's partly right in the sense of we've known for a very, very long time that full-time remote work was not very healthy for companies and for people alike. And so this is why the vast majority of the economy has switched to hybrid work and not full-time remote work.
And so what are the consequences of that switch?
So the consequences of that switch, I think, are really evident for a lot of people, which is that they can better manage the interface between their work and their personal lives. The world has changed a lot over 100 years, and I think, there's just factors in the work equation that we can change. And so one of these factors has been, do we have to work all, at the same time, during the same hours, in the same location? And I think, with the development of internet technologies, it's been shown that, no, we do not. We can have more flexibility in this. So it doesn't mean that everybody should be remote workers. Absolutely not. There are people who don't want to be remote workers, and there are people who can't. But if you can have more flexibility, why not use it?
Okay, on that flexibility, how much flexibility is too much? Because I've spoken to people that work in the downtown core, big companies in downtown Montreal, and they'll tell me, oh, well, what we've done is it's optional. We ask everyone to show up twice a week, but it's actually optional. And then no one actually shows up, Right. So what is the right mix that you need, in order to make sure that, there is that cohesive, productive work environment?
So I think one thing that's really important to understand is telling people to show up arbitrarily and telling them you need to show up 2 days a week with no reason for it or with nothing to do in the central office, doesn't really work. If you want people to show up, you have to create opportunities for them to participate and do something when they're showing up. Otherwise, they're better off, staying home and working in a quiet and calm environment where they're not going to be disturbed. So I think, it's really important to determine with your employees, what are the needs? What do they need to do? When is it useful to come and when is it not useful to come? And then you can craft with them something, right, where people can come part of the week and then can stay home part of the week.
So let's look at success and failure here for a second, right? So I have this guy here, Sam Altman, OpenAI CEO. It can be argued that right now, no one is more successful, right? What's happening at OpenAI is quite stunning for a lot of people, and he's a guy that fully believes that everyone needs to work together, right, for a cohesive thing. And then I look at some recent failure. I look at Shopify. Shopify has laid off 20% of their workforce. Famously, their CEO at the start of the pandemic said, the office is dead, it's over. He shut down all the offices, and now a few years later, massive job cuts, and that company hasn't been faring well of late. So what does success and failure tell us about, what we should be looking at when it comes to working from home and working in the office?
So you have to be careful, though, not to have some sort of a halo effect. Shopify didn't have to fire 20% of their workforce because they switched to remote work. It's something that's going on across the economy in the tech industry. And actually, a lot of these companies are firing people they hired during the pandemic. So it's kind of like, give and take, unfortunately. But these were remote workers that were hired during the pandemic. OpenAI is highly, highly successful, but it's not successful because it works centrally in an office or because it works from home. It's successful because it's a disruptive product. So I think, the CEO's opinion on remote work are interesting, but they're pretty irrelevant. And I don't think that his opinion are worth more than any other CEO that would be in favor or against it. The fact that OpenAI is a success is a really interesting. It's very, very interesting, and I am a big proponent of AI. I think it's actually really a fascinating topic. But I'm surprised by this opinion, and I don't think the fact that his company is so successful doesn't add any weight to his opinion.
We're with Dr. Jean-Nicolas Reyt, Associate Professor of Organizational Behavior at McGill University's Desautels Faculty of Management. We're talking about what the right mix is here of working from home and imposing a back to work, back to the office by certain companies here. Now, Dr. Reyt, one of the reasons why I brought up Shopify is because, and this is anecdotal, right? But I have a friend that ended up going to Shopify during the pandemic, and they started Shopify. They have no offices. A year later, they have never met anyone they work with. It's all remote, and they end up leaving the company because they can't take it, right? So, I get it when, let's say, a team has been working together for 5 years together, okay? They've worked in the office every day for 5 years. Then the pandemic happens, they all go home. They know each other. They know how the office works. They know the culture. They know the vibe, right? So they can continue to work effectively. Where I start to have questions is, now the pandemic's long gone now. Now I'm like, well, what about the 20-year-olds entering the workforce? How do they end up part of a culture if no culture exists?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really agree with you. And it's something that I've seen also when I was teaching. We had students at some point that had never set foot in a university, and they were in their second year, right? Which is crazy when you think about it. So they had no friends, no nothing. So I really agree with you. And I think this is why, a lot of companies are going to hybrid work so that they can kind of it's a win-win. They can have the benefits of having more flexibility, and they can have the benefits of still having a culture and people hanging out and, developing these sort of soft bonds that people develop when they're together. I think it's extremely important. And I do agree that, there's a lot of issues with full-time remote work. One of them, for example, being that people are terrible at solving the conflicts in their lives. Most people avoid every single conflict in their life. And working from home doesn't help, right? It means if you have a conflict with somebody at work, maybe you're just never going to solve it. It's just going to stay there and fester. So I agree with you. I think this is where, it's really important for managers to understand that the world has changed and we can't continue doing the same things we did before. This is why I really disagree with the idea of coming back to the office, because we're not coming back. It's going to be a step forward in a different direction. But it's very, very important to understand that you don't manage a remote worker the same way you manage an office worker. And management is a science. It's an art and a science, and it's something that people just need to learn and need to get information about. So I agree with you that in a company that goes fully remote, you have these issues that will definitely arise, which is that people don't really feel engaged in the company, they don't really feel committed to their company, and maybe they just feel like it's easier for them to switch around. At the same time, you also have other benefits. For example, a lot of Canadian companies now can hire people from all over the world, and they can have, experts in Germany or engineers in France or wherever, and they can really have a workforce that's truly global. So I think, you have positives and drawbacks for all of this.
Another thing that Sam Altman said is that some of his best people are remote. Do you think that it's fair in a company if you're like, these 5% of people, they're so amazing, they get to stay at home, but everyone else who's not as good has to come to the office? Do you think as an organization you should reward perhaps your top employees if they're good at home and let them be different than the rest of the office?
So it's actually how the economy has worked, before the pandemic. I did my PhD dissertation on remote work, and I did that during 2009 and 2014. And after I published my dissertation, I had to switch gears and publish on something else because companies were just not interested about remote work. Nobody was interested about it because it was 3% of the general population. And there was a very, very paternalistic approach to remote work, which is that genuinely we don't trust employees, except some very senior employees are trustworthy enough that we can let them work from home. And I just think it sends a terrible message to the entire workforce. I really don't understand that kind of logic where you can trust some people and not trust others. High-performing employees, need to help other employees become high-performing as well. And I don't think working from home should be reserved to only the top performers or the most senior people.
Dr. Reyt, we got to leave it there. Thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thanks for having me. That's
Dr. Jean-Nicolas Reyt from McGill University's Desautels Faculty of Management.